Hello and welcome back to the Youngstown Click Be Connected podcast, where you are connected to what's going on in this entire region between Youngstown and Pittsburgh, between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, because we all need more connections in our life. And when we're more connected, we feel better, we feel more engaged, and we feel motivated to reach out and do something new. And so I'm so excited. You guys have been such great listening. Such great listening audience, and I'm just excited to be back with you yet again. And my guest today has made some history in Youngstown, and he is not stopping, guys. We are talking just person to person, and he was talking about some of the plans and the dreams and the things that he's got in the works and trying to make happen. So I'm super excited to introduce you today to Derrick McDowell. But before we get into what he's doing, I want to thank Cigarro, which is where we are recording.
Yeah.
It is a cigar shop and membership club here in Hubbard, Ohio, and it is just a phenomenal place, isn't it? So it's so comfortable
beautiful.
here. It's just like so multifaceted.
There's depth and substance to this
Oh,
place.
come
it makes
on.
you want to literally just dive into all of it.
I know, right? It's such a sense of community that they really wanted to develop. And the people here are great. The people you meet here are great. Whether you come in and just enjoy a cigar off the street or whether you're a member, it's super cool. So thanks to Cigarro. And then our sponsors, OhioFlame.com. They make custom fire pits, and you can make them like with your favorite team. You can make them with your last name so that it becomes a real centerpiece. Nothing brings the community together quite like a bonfire. And so that's so much fun. You want the fire pit that everybody's talking about, kind of like lasts for generations. That's OhioFlame.com. And then the Gallagher, which is where they have newly renovated Airbnb units. So when you have friends or family coming into town, you definitely want to check out the Gallagher on Airbnb, but they're also on Facebook. You could follow them and take a look at the rooms that they have available in the heart of downtown Youngstown.
You should literally be a leisure guide at this point.
That would be so much fun. What in the world?
Leisure, Airbnb,
Yeah, hey, we have your place to stay. We got your places to eat. Come on.
They're paying you well, I hope. Or we're going to go back and renegotiate with all of them.
Maybe you should renegotiate and be a lawyer. You should just pivot. You're like, or an agent.
Let's go back with the leisure NIL deal.
I love
name,
it.
image, and leisure.
Oh my goodness, you're good.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, let's not waste any more time and get right into who you are, Derrick.
Thank
what
you for having
you
me.
do, and I have so many questions, but let's go ahead and go ahead and introduce yourself.
Well, my name's Derrick McDowell. I'm a native son of the city of Youngstown. I love my city. I love the people.
So evident.
And that's just nothing more dear to my heart than the city and the people that reside there. I grew up a bit in Birmingham, Alabama, and returned to Youngstown during high school and have been here ever since.
And you were a Cheney grad, right?
Cheney grad. I went to Woodrow Wilson for a year.
Okay.
And got into a little bit of trouble, and my mom wasn't having it.
Oh.
She was just like, "Listen, boy, I ain't got time to keep coming up to that school." Actually, I don't know if you go back a couple of decades, Woodrow Wilson High School used to have this policy that if you were late, you had to wait out in the foyer and use the payphone to call your parent to come.
You're kidding.
Like they had to accompany you in and explain why you were late. And that's why my mom was just like, "I'm not having it."
So you were late. That was
Yeah.
that was your
So
trouble. Oh man.
That dates me. Like you have to use a payphone? What's a payphone? Like we didn't have cell phones to call
That's
our parents all day
pretty
long.
cool.
My mom wasn't coming
Wow.
up there anyway. She was not coming.
So you had to stand out there in
Yeah.
the hallway, be embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Oh man.
Yeah. But fast forward, I had, started trying to get into college. That didn't work out so great. Started a family and really hit that male societal role of providing and found myself in corporate America. Working with AT&T, gave them about 13 years of my life. And then I got into some consulting work. I worked for the Harley Davidson out in Austintown.
What?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I was helping them build a business out there.
Okay.
And then while I was working there, I got into some travel and that travel led me all across the country. And
Real quick, did you drive a Harley? Did you ride a Harley?
I rode everything.
Did you?
Everything I could.
Oh, wow.
So I started watching all the movies, like Easy Rider and Wild Thing, and
man. So you had your look, your swag.
I learned about hill climbing and the Baja 1000 and desert races and enduro matches. And I'm down at Barber in Birmingham, Alabama. Took me back home. They have a racetrack that was from an old donated dairy farm, like all this property.
Really?
And they made this guy turned it into a whole museum of motorcycles and classic cars. And it's a racetrack.
Is it still there?
Now. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called Barber in Birmingham. Yeah. So, you get into that world, and then you see how much reading and traveling opens up your mind to different things. And then you come back home to Youngstown, and it's kind of a little bit of absenteeism going on here of some of the culture that you see in other communities. I mean, I'm in Brooklyn and Miami and Denver and all these places, and I would just long for home. I'm a very homebody kind of guy.
And there's no place like Youngstown.
Yeah, none.
But it did. We went through some rough years.
Yeah.
And everybody, the identity was based in the past.
Sure.
It was in the past. So I think that there was a little bit of floundering.
Yeah.
Like, what do we have to offer without that? And it's hard to live up to Idora Park and so many things. But
I saw somebody post a picture of Idora Park the other day, and there are folks who didn't know that existed in Youngstown. Oh, they were like, "You had that?"
I know. Well, I remember when I first found out about it, my dad told me about it, and I was like, I was so curious. I was like, wait, like a theme park in the middle of the city?
Yeah, they
like,
called it Youngstown's $1 million playground.
Oh,
because it just was uncommon to have a theme park in a residential area. Like you could literally go outside of your backyard and see the wildcat.
We are amazing here in Youngstown.
So that's precedent setting.
Yeah,
we really should be like, hey, Youngstown was like, we were ahead of our time. I mean, we're here at Sagaro, and I walk in and I'm being shown the gun from Richard Pryor's skit about Youngstown. I've known about that skit for years, where he mentions that he was doing some stand up here, and that the owners of the nightclub weren't paying the acts that night. And he says, "No, I'm getting paid." And so he's waving this gun around at this owner who doesn't realize is a mob boss. Like he's probably had guns in his face his whole life,
To hear him tell it is hilarious. But then to see the gun and to realize how small this little gun is when he, the mob there.
And for them to just treat it like it was part of his act was probably the funniest piece.
So
like, do that thing again with that gun, Richie.
That's so funny. But, okay.
That's my story. I mean, all that travel then brings me back home, and then I see, again, the love that I have for my city, but the absence of a lot of the cultural things that other communities have so prevalent. Yeah. You see arts culture on full display in Miami and areas where you go. You see longboards and skates and people on the beach working out, and you see people in motorcycles, and you see these cultures in Denver where they're just surrounded by motorcycles, music, art, and we have all of those amenities. That's what I would come home to and say, I know the arts is here because we have Butler, we have McDonough. When I was on YSU's campus, we had Bliss Hall where there's music, and Dana School. Yes. We have Dior and Playhouse and, Ballet Western Reserve. And I don't want to forget anybody, but I mean, we had those things. It was just their presentation to the community that left me a bit wanting. And that's no indictment on any one particular organization. That's about how we master chef the ingredients that we have for our own community. That's what we need. We need master chefs in our community that know and can see ingredients and put together, meals that are digestible for folks to enjoy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, did you know the Butler, I'm sure you know, it was the very first American art museum in the whole United States. Yeah.
And it's incredible to go in there. I mean, I think that one point, and I don't know if they still have it, but they had a Van Gogh in there.
Yeah, and now they have
$1 million painting.
They have a Homer Winslow.
Oh,
that's worth millions.
Yeah, I haven't.
And they got it for like a couple $100,000, like back in the day.
Like we sleep on our own community. Yeah. And I'm like, so fast forward, I had traveled some more and come back and had gotten a taste of these public markets
Yeah.
And I said, I know that we can pull this kind of thing off here. I know that we have the creatives and the makers and the doers. Went on the hunt looking for the closest thing I could find to what I saw in some other communities, and found myself in Pittsburgh, Akron, Canton, Cleveland, a little bit in this area. But it was just absent. And I'm sitting there, and it's an interesting story where I go to myself, now who's going to do this? Who can I get
Wow.
to create something like this? And after, obviously searching high and low and finding no one, somehow I volunteered myself with very little knowledge or experience on how to do it, but a drive and a passion to say, I've seen this and I know it can work here. And,
I remember seeing it pop up. I remember seeing it talked about, seeing the first signs talking about the Youngstown Flea. I remember that. I remember when it was like, what is this new thing happening? And you were set up in the Cavelli parking lot.
Yeah.
So, but explain to us how the Youngstown Flea is different than your farmer's market or your like street fair.
Sure. So you're looking at the word being reclaimed. There's flea markets, which traditionally are your negotiating, wares from estate sales or someone's garage items. There might be a few eclectic things in there that are vintage pieces from somebody's collection. But a flea is more of a reclaimed idea to lift and bring up the small business maker. This isn't a person that's reselling other people's products.
Right.
This is someone who's the inventor, the creator, the maker of their own candles, the maker of their own grooming beard oils. There are collectors and vintage items, but oftentimes it's been reclaimed in a way.
Yeah.
Someone taking woods or metals and turning them into other items.
And that's like an age-old thing.
Yeah.
But what you get when you go to Youngstown Flea are people who honestly might not even be able to make it at their craft. It would be crafts that would like fall along the way if they didn't have the platform to sell. I mean,
there are people working in leather goods.
Yeah.
People working as bladesmiths. Butchers that are coming to the market with bison meat. You know what I mean? Like these are farms that are literally, like you said, we built an ecosystem and a platform for these folks to still be viable, for you to still be able to shop them in today's fast-paced world where I can get it all off Amazon. These are often one-offs. These are often limited quantities. These are just, collectibles and vintage items. I had a woman that takes memorabilia from Youngstown, and I saw one of the original pennants from Youngstown State University. And before she could sell it, I'm like, I want that thing.
Right. Actually, like she's
and I didn't finish YSU, but I was like, I'll take it.
Oh man, I need to go check for stuff. How many vendors are you up to right now?
So we've had as many as 90 vendors.
Wow.
And we flex between, it's cold right now for some folks. So everybody doesn't come outside in these early winter months.
Right.
Our upcoming market is this Saturday, the 10th. And so, we'll have about 60 vendors selling the goods that they make. But we actually had a cool thing where we found ourselves turning away vendors in certain categories because we had so many applicants. And so we thought to make a specialty market. We call them our baked goods gurus.
Oh,
and
that's
so
fun.
It's called the Sweets and Treats Market for Valentine's. And so we're going to have over 20 vendors just with all baked goods, sweets, and treats.
Let me tell you, and it's so crazy to see, like if you have 10 people in a row all selling a chocolate chip cookie, none of them will taste the same.
Yeah.
I just had this amazing cheesecake. It is the closest to the way my mom used to make it. And I love cheesecake, but sometimes I'm like, a little disappointed.
Sure.
And here this lady who's been in business, I just happened to discover her. And I'm like, this tastes like my mom's. Oh, I was so happy.
Yeah, and that's what we need to do is rediscover. And we actually need to learn to explore a bit more too, in my opinion. I think we're so, my old boss, his wife's father, so his father-in-law, only Sinatra. Just a Sinatra guy.
Oh, really?
Would listen to vinyl records. He said, my old boss says, you don't know how many times I tried to buy him a different record. And he just wouldn't listen to it, And so it's wonderful to love Sinatra, but to like tune out every other artist. And so what's my point? It's like, it's fine to do the things that we've been doing in Youngstown, but if we don't expand our palette, if we don't learn that we were created by working with our hands.
Yes.
The steel mills didn't create themselves.
Right.
They didn't start as these behemoth buildings where we made steel out of them. They started with someone discovering the valley, discovering Youngstown, discovering the minerals in the ground, probably making small little shops to handle those minerals. You know, we were fabricating this. Lanterman's Mill was used.
I know.
Right?
To actually crush. Right, exactly.
Right.
And that wall, there's like a 6-foot wall, thick wall in the basement. You know, what's interesting is even the steel mills, they were owned by Youngstown people.
Yeah.
That's the crazy thing to me, because in our day and age, you have big corporations own this and they put them and they decide that, oh, we're going to open this hub here and there and whatever. But the steel mills and so many industries were owned by the people of Youngstown. And that, to me, is fascinating to find out.
Yeah, and you'll find those names if you ever go to one of those Oak Hill Cemetery tours.
Oh, my God.
Those names that you see on those headstones are some of those steel magnets. So it's actually interesting that it was just as much as a blessing as it was a curse, because a lot of those folks that made their money from steel also lost their money because of steel too. So that's my earlier point, is we hadn't diversified. We didn't think about how one day steel may not be the thing that goes along with our identity. So all of those folks who had money in steel, they were doing wonderful when it was wonderful.
Yeah.
You know, you're up when you're up.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was a bit of our demise as well, in the sense that, you know, if you invested in, there was a book, it was written by a lawyer. It's actually a journal. I can't think of the name of it, but it was a lawyer from Youngstown when the Great Depression happened.
Okay.
He was actually journaling every day about different segments of the community.
Oh, my.
And he was predicting things like, now property is at its lowest value. And he was looking at the stock market saying, now, you know, these companies have been at the lowest I've ever seen. And then a week later, he's saying, oh, last week's prices I thought were the lowest, they went lower. And one of his family members comes back decades later and quantifies all of their dad's research that he was doing in the journaling. And it will say, Dad was right about this back in the 20s, or Dad was right about this. If you would have bought this stock.
Shows.
Yeah. And so it was very interesting to go back and see how these behemoth organizations that were once, you know, hailed, Dollar Bank and Trust, and, you know, the steel mills were just on the collapse during the 30s. And, you know, he says, you know, if you had any extra money, now would be the time to buy property where it used to be this expensive. It's this low now. And then his family comes back behind those comments from the 20s and 30s, and they're saying, Dad was right. If you would have just bought that land, it is now what was known as, you know, whatever this property is. And it's like, you know, so making sure that we understand that, it was wonderful to have the mills as an industry that supported us. But if we don't learn to diversify, how did Pittsburgh make its comeback? Its tech sector, its education now, its hospital systems. It's got all these different industries that bolster it now, not just one sector. And if we don't learn to do that and explore a bit, don't just be Sinatra people all day long. We've got to look and see that we're the arts and entertainment. And there's folks like Penguin City that are brewing, and we're industrial.
I think the heart of that is kind of what Youngstown Click is all about, is rediscovering the people. The people, because if there's 100,000 people that live in any given radius, there's 100,000 different ideas. And when we're taught, oh, well, that's, you know, let so-and-so else do it, or that's, you know, then it begins to whittle down and people just get kind of in a groove when we forget that we have solutions, we have ideas. I love it. So, okay, so now
I'm
back
gonna shut up and let you ask some questions.
No,
listen,
you really
haven't
listen. I'm only going. Listen. We have a time. We have a time constraint because it's very busy, man. It's taking his time to talk to us. So
never too busy for you.
Otherwise, oh man, there's so many different things. I love it though, and it's all good information. It's not, you know.
All good.
So okay, so was it an easy journey. So you were working at, I mean, I know you've had fun. It doesn't take long to talk to you and to find out that you have fun doing what you do.
Yeah.
You love it. But has it been fairly easy? Has it been difficult? What effect has it had on your family?
Sure.
How has it changed you as a person?
It was in the beginning very difficult because you don't have any historical data to pull from. You have these other communities that, quite honestly, are much quote unquote healthier markets, and I
Yeah.
mean that in a sense as a all around, not just a flea market. I'm talking a market. Cleveland has 6 times the population of Youngstown.
Right.
It's a healthier
Okay.
market. Akron, Canton, Pittsburgh, and so when you come here and you're looking to try and pull off something like the Youngstown Flea, you have to scour the earth to
Yeah.
get folks to believe that we're a viable, not Youngstown Flea market, that Youngstown as a whole is a viable market to come from Cleveland to do business here.
Yeah.
And so first was the right location. Like you
Okay.
said, I mean, I had to find that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And that was downtown. But negotiating with the property owners was challenging.
Yeah.
I took from October of 2015 until the end of January in 2016
Wow.
to negotiate the property use.
Wow.
And so we launched the first flea
Okay.
April of 2016.
Wow.
So you
Wow.
understand, like I'm going from October, November, you get through Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and you still don't know if you even have your location
Yeah.
yet. And yet you've got this idea, and then you get a yes in February, and then you launch in April, public.
Right. Wow.
And it's
wow.
like, oh my gosh.
And I remember a Cleveland cookie company or something. I remember trying that at the first flea that I went to.
Yeah.
It was like a
Fat teas,
fat
comes
teas,
down.
right?
Yeah.
So you got like people coming
Yeah.
from Cleveland, from these different places too. But since then, there are people who have literally launched and blown up.
Yeah.
Who got their start? I saw you smile because I know that's got to mean
I'm
so
proud,
much to you. Talk
proud.
to us about a couple of those.
Yeah, and so we like to kind of dub ourselves as a micro incubator, and so
Okay.
we take that chance on folks that otherwise wouldn't get that chance in a traditional retail setting.
Yeah.
It's a lot to buy into a building. It's a lot to go ask the mall for space to come up with an idea. It's a lot to pay rent somewhere every single month and have to show up with
Absolutely.
store hours. And so the flea allows folks to lower cost buy-in to introduce themselves. I like to say we're introducing a community of makers to a community of shoppers and supporters.
That's so
And
good.
so it's worked well for a number of folks like your Youngstown Clothing Co's who, have been shipping shirts all across the country.
Right. Have a spot in the mall now.
Yeah, spot in the mall doing, NIL deals with athletes now.
Really?
Yeah, they've got some
Wow.
athletes from Youngstown State University, basketball,
Okay.
women's basketball, football, deals with Handel's Ice Cream,
You're right.
Canfield Fair.
And local businesses.
White House Fruit Farms. I think they just launched a deal with Holiday Bowling, on Struthers.
Oh, Holiday, that's a classic.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And so, I trust me when I say I would never, ever take credit for anyone's hard work. These
Yeah.
folks built their businesses.
Absolutely.
But, if they're honest, they'll go back and say, we got our start and we got our footing at the Youngstown Flea. Culture House Coffee came and said, hey, we want to own our own shop one day. And
Really?
we map out how these participants of the Flea can partner with us and get news stories and visibility, placement at the market, marketing and advertising to get their name out there. Dough House Cookies with
Yeah.
they just were killing it, before
Wow.
COVID hit, and they lost a family member, unfortunately, that interrupted some of their business operations. But, there are just folks who are literally saying, without the Youngstown Flea, there are people who are leaving their jobs
Yeah.
to now go into their dreams full time.
Incredible.
And so
Incredible.
never again will we take credit for their hard work, but without that platform to give them the confidence, to give them the opportunity to market, test, and get verification that their idea, everybody wants to know that their idea worked.
Yeah, absolutely.
right? It's like you come up with something, and if one person is benefited by it, you're like, it
Right.
worked.
Yeah, yeah.
And now you just need to duplicate or replicate or, scale
Right.
that.
And sometimes the people like your family or people it's just normal for them. So
Yeah.
when you have your stuff on the table and people come by and they go, "Oh, that's cool." That is so
Yeah.
rewarding. That's
Yeah.
got to be so
And when
amazing
money
for
exchanges from one person's hands to your hands for one of your ideas,
Suddenly everything
you're like,
changes.
oh my gosh. And one of the continuing challenges is keeping the market fresh. I'd like to say the Youngstown Flea or any small business can be like a helium balloon, right?
Yeah.
If you don't keep that balloon
Yeah.
inflated, it's going to come down. And the
okay.
expense of keeping up with being creative, competitors in the market,
Yeah.
new vendors, while maintaining a loyalty to your existing vendors, fresh ideas. That's where you
Absolutely.
see things like we're doing a market again for Mother's Day at Mill Creek Park at the Flower Gardens.
Nice.
Those are the
Nice.
kind of things where we do Flea on Phelps
Yeah.
as a part
yeah.
of the downtown parade and holiday
Right.
light up night. Things like collaborating, we call it Flea Bowl with the West Side Bowl on
Okay.
Mahoning Avenue. We're
yep.
going to do a market at their location.
Okay.
Federal Frenzy, we're calling it Flea at Frenzy, connecting with YSU
yes.
for their large music festival.
It just keeps getting better,
Yeah.
bigger and bigger
Yeah.
every year. Yeah.
And our wonderful neighbors, Dope Cider House across the street in Penguin City, we just continually think about how to elevate that east end of the downtown.
So
And
let's talk about
those are
that.
challenges. To own the building that you're
Oh, my
operating out
goodness.
of is a challenge.
Okay, let's talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
Tell the viewers or the listeners when you have your flea, because
Sure.
it's pretty consistent.
Yeah, we typically on excuse me, on Saturdays. We're not always the second Saturday because we
you're
like
not?
to plan around what will draw
Oh,
folks
got
in.
it, got
right?
it. Okay,
So
yeah.
it could be second Saturday because of Mother's Day or Father's Day. But as we start
Got it.
moving towards the end of the year, it's getting cold and nasty out. So we
Okay.
often switch to that first Saturday. So
Got
it
it.
gives us more good weather.
That makes sense.
And then we can get into our holiday markets, which are typically we want to be well before the holiday. We don't want you waiting around
right.
the day before Christmas to try and shop the flea.
Right,
So we
right.
try and do our markets early and
Okay.
often. But
So
we're
they
once per
follow
month.
you one Saturday per month, and
Yep.
they follow you on Facebook or
Sure.
your website. You have a website.
Yeah, youngstownflea.com is the
Okay.
website, and
And then they
Youngstown
can keep track
Flea
of
at
that.
any Instagram, Facebook,
Perfect.
all of that.
And if vendors, if there's somebody who's like, oh, I think this sounds like perfect,
Yeah.
they could get a hold
Just
of
visit
you
the
through
website,
the website.
yeah,
Okay.
and then there's a apply tab there, and we take applications all the time because
Yeah.
we're constantly. If somebody's got it, you got it. And we don't
Right.
care when, now there are certain categories that fill up pretty quick.
Right.
Because we just have limited space right now. But we are always accepting applications, and we're always here to showcase the people we partner with.
Right.
That's what this is all about. It's not about
It's amazing.
this idea that I came with to do this. This is
Right.
about going back to what we talked about earlier, showing off the city that we love.
Come on.
And now proving that people will come here from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They are being sent this way. Other vendors are telling them, you want to do the Youngstown Flea.
Got it.
And that's not a pretentious statement. That's just evidence that tells us, hey, no, we're not Miami.
Yeah.
But we're just as cool. We got our own thing going on.
Yeah,
here.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, speaking of the East End, so just for those to help you picture, and especially if you haven't been to downtown Youngstown in a while, well, real quick, there have been people coming from Pittsburgh, from like Salem, all over the place to the Youngstown Flea. So you really have made Youngstown. There was a period of time when I was younger that Youngstown was not the place to go. There was
Sure.
really no reason to go down there. There was a health food store that we would go to, or occasionally like the Powers Auditorium. But
Yeah.
other than that, there was not a reason to drive a half an hour into downtown Youngstown.
Sure.
And now there is, and
Yeah.
people are doing that, and I love that. But so you went from the Cavelli Center parking lot to buying a building.
Sure.
Talk to us about that building,
Yeah.
and then explain the East End to the people who
Sure.
might not be able, know.
East End has been this mixed use industrial space. You have Brilex on that end of town. Andrews Avenue has a business corridor. If you come off of South Avenue downtown near the post office, you'll see Valley Foods. You'll
Yep.
see those Social Security office was on that end.
So you'll take a right instead of a left, and that's
yeah.
the East End.
Yeah.
Okay.
And quite honestly, like you said, a forgotten about end of downtown because we've transitioned away from being largely industrial in that way. And so the businesses that are still operating on that end of town, they just can do their business without you thinking about them.
Right.
And they're not the reason you're going to come downtown.
Right.
You don't need anything from Brilex today.
Right.
Youngstown Sheet and Tube is not on my list of places I need to stop.
Right.
But we purchased our building October of 2020 on the East End. Used to be the old Northeast Fabricators building.
Okay.
Historical building from 1870.
Wow.
Just wonderful bones, wonderful history. Then 2 months after we purchased, Penguin City comes in and buys the old William B. Pollock building across the street. And we didn't even know of one another.
Are
so
you kidding?
As fate would have it, we become these wonderful neighbors.
Yeah.
And then it just, boom, puts the East End back on the map and starts saying, hey, now these near riverfront properties, how do we begin to connect them? And how do we begin to connect the community back to that river that once was utilized to bolster the steel mills? How do we use it now educationally, historically, and recreationally for our future purposes? And it's just so exciting to think about. So the challenges of owning a building certainly are there. Again, it's a 150-year-old building. So if a doorknob breaks, you're not just going to Home Depot and replacing a doorknob. There's likely no doorknob. You probably need not even a new door, but a whole new frame.
Oh, my goodness.
A toilet breaks, and it's not just replacing a valve or a this or that.
Plumbing
it's like
and all that stuff.
You call
oh, my goodness.
But it's well worth it because the community deserves it. The community deserves to not only be able to walk into this building that we've purchased and remember that my grandfather used to be a crane operator.
Right.
We still have 5 cranes in the building that people just point to. 4 of them are operational still.
Wow.
And people just reminisce. And there's nothing wrong with looking to our past. Being stuck there is one of the reasons we're challenged these days.
Right.
But combine that with the future plans that we have for the property when it comes to being an anchor, a transformational hub for Yogo Bike Share, who's doing pedal assist bikes.
Yeah.
We're a hub for that. Figuring out how we can get you to that river so you can hike back there and kayak and
so that's
fish
one of the things I'm going to be bringing to the Youngstown Click is the whole kayaking. Now you could canoe and kayak down the river, and they have the drop off point. So I'm going to find out about that. I don't know. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
But
B&O has a launching dock there,
part,
and then Struthers has one near Bobseen Park there. And it's interesting
so guys,
because
if you watch Youngstown Click, make sure you stay posted. I'll bring that up to you. I'll bring you all the deets.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's just so exciting. It hasn't been without challenge. Trust me, we're still in the throes of trying to renovate this property, and it's just going to take. You're on to something when you have a vision that's just well beyond you.
Come on.
I don't again say that pretentiously. There are people, like you said earlier, who are coming as vendors and partners of the Youngstown Flea we've had vendors come from Detroit. We've had a vendor come from Philadelphia. I thought when she told me Philadelphia, it was the street on the south side of Youngstown. Like, oh, you're from Philadelphia? She's like, no, Philly, PA. And I'm like, you drove here from Philly? We had a girl driving here from East Aurora, New York to be a vendor. We've had people come to the Flea who are from Canada who said, I'm in town for a conference, and they told me this was the thing to do.
Listen, there was a vendor that you I didn't even get to see her at the Flea, but you had highlighted her. And I loved her stuff so much. I went to her website and was like, okay, I want this. I want this. Just because you highlighted her, and she's from Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
But because she comes to the Flea, then she got a fan. Yeah. And I'm saving up for a few pieces. But like, just so crazy.
We had a guy who's a bladesmith, and he was coming from West Virginia. And when we were courting him to come, I mean, I'm looking at his prices, and these knives are $200-300 because I mean, he's literally crafting the metal, whittling the wood for the handles and everything. And I'm like, oh man, but I was thinking for Father's Day, and I don't want to be sexist because I'm not suggesting women need good knives just like men need good knives. But I thought, I actually brought him in May for Mother's Day to get him acclimated to the community. Okay. And by Father's Day, this guy's he goes, I'm delivering knives at this point. He wasn't just coming here selling knives. He had orders that he was delivering at that point, $200-300 knives. And so when we try to say Youngstown doesn't have any money, it's not the case. If we try to some people have tried to say, well, some of those vendors, they're not really local to Youngstown. Thank God that there are people who see our city and believe in it enough to drive an hour to participate, who believe in our city enough to drive here to shop our city.
And it still is about the people of Youngstown, because they're now offered something
absolutely
that they would have never been able to,
And you know what that's supposed to be as well? It's supposed to be evidence for someone here in Youngstown that if they can do it, I can do it too.
Yes,
Getting
the inspiration.
I call it, brilliantly borrowing.
Right.
If you see a guy from Cleveland who's making leather wallets out of old baseball gloves, that's what this guy's doing.
Come on.
He just goes to thrift stores, get every, it's like Cleveland has the Guardians.
I bring my grandma down. My grandma is a crowd. She made she would love it. Because this was her dream. That there would be something like this. And
to return to working with our hands, there's just nothing like it. You know what I mean? Like to craft something. And I could point to people who are doing things in our community. They're just kind of doing it for other people. There are people who are doing hair and nails and makeup and this and that. And I'm like, well, do you have your own skincare?
Oh, right.
Beard oils?
You
know, essential oil. Like, those are things that people in other cities aren't going to the store and buying. They're making.
Right. That's so
and
beautiful.
And then giving to their family and friends and market testing. And then they're coming to the Youngstown Flea and then finding out, oh, wow, this is a business.
And it builds appreciation for your neighbor when you realize, wow, like this person that I would have never, even said hello to, know what I'm saying? And then they're making my favorite product. They're two streets over from me or whatever.
And there's
okay.
The relational part of it is the important piece, is to say, I know who makes the deodorant that I use. And I can call them about my skincare and let them know what's going on with me personally and how it's just all different. So I love it.
I love it. I love what you do. And now I want to go right now. Especially with the baked goods ones coming up for February. Okay. Yeah. I can't let you go without touching on this historic thing that happened. So the nation was in uproar during, a few years back.
Sure.
And that, kind of came to, kind of touched onto Youngstown. And thankfully not as much as some of the other bigger cities where there was just chaos and a lot of stuff. But you, because of the Youngstown Flea and because of your involvement in different things, somehow you became a voice that was connected to the benefit of Youngstown. And I don't know all the specifics, but I do know that you got called by the vice president.
Yeah.
So that's huge. So tell us a little bit about that. I know that you're short on time, but
no, it's fine. I believe it was spawned by what I believe is the death of George Floyd.
Okay.
And there was a young girl. I work with an organization called Mahoning Valley Sojourn to the Past, and we go into Youngstown city schools and surrounding school districts and take high schoolers on a civil rights journey to the South so they can learn principles of nonviolence and bring them back to the city of Youngstown.
Okay.
And so out of that work, a high school girl called at the murder of George Floyd and said, I would like to do a march. And I've never done a march. I'm 18 years old, but I just want to have our voice heard. And I know that you guys have organized these types of things before. And so I was just really trying to help a young adult in our community have a voice.
Okay.
And so we helped her organize this march, and it went wonderfully successful. But subsequently, there was another group out of that march that had come down and spawned into a whole nother separate thing that had nothing to do with what this girl had organized. And I had saw it, and I love my city, and I said, I'm not going anywhere until I make sure that everybody gets home tonight.
Wow.
And I was there from the first girls' march at 11 a.m. that morning until 11 p.m. that night, following these folks around the city that I love and making sure that you weren't going to come here and wreak havoc on our community, that you have a right to protest. You have a right for your voice to be heard. You saw me assisting Youngstown police in trying to mediate situations that could have been explosive. You saw me stand in front of a Chaffin Career Technical Center when somebody busted out the window, and I said, I will put my body in front of this door before I let you go in here and take the things that belong to our students. You saw me mediating when a bus was about to run through a crowd and just run folks over because they refused to, and that driver might have felt threatened by the crowd, but they were just trying to cross the street. And at the same time, this bus. So I literally stood nose to nose at the front of this bus and just held my hands up, banging on the window saying, stop. So I committed to being out there until everybody got themselves safely home. And it didn't matter what side I was on. My personal opinions didn't matter. What mattered most was the city that I love. And out of that, because we didn't have the chaos that was going on across the nation where there was looting and rioting and burning of cities, it really reached the office of the president and the White House. I think they were using it as a model to say that we can have police community relations without things getting wildly crazy. And I believe that Warren, Ohio, had a march shortly before this one, and it was pretty successful in that same way, that it didn't get crazy chaotic. But I had a friend message me and say, your name is being tossed around at the White House. And I'm like, bro, get out of here. You know what I mean? Like, you don't hear that often. And I'm like, and it just didn't make any sense to me. It didn't correlate because I didn't get into any of that for any kind of recognition whatsoever. There was a moment where at the march, the administration of the city called for a curfew. But nobody knew it. And then I start seeing the National Guard roll in, and the YPD starts organizing a bit more and really kind of, coming structurally towards the crowd a bit more. And so you see me, I didn't know that, one of the news anchors was following me around this whole time. I'm on the freeway because there are cars parked on the freeway, standing on their car, protesting and this and that. I said, screaming, there's a curfew. We have to get out of here. You have to go home. You've had your voice heard. Please, let's be safe. Well, here, this is all being aired on the news, right? And so unbeknownst to me, again, my name's getting tossed around. So I remember sitting at home. It was a bright and sunny day. And I'm on my front porch and my phone rings, and it's a number I don't recognize, but it says Washington, D.C. You know how the area kind of comes up? And I'm like, telemarketer.
That's what I would think too. Okay.
Telemarketer. And I answer the call, and it's some guy who says he's with the Secret Service and he needs my Social Security. And I'm like, bro, I'm just supposed to give you my information on the phone? Like, I don't know who you are. And he goes, no, this is really the Secret Service. And, we need to have security clearance before you get to meet the former Vice President Mike Pence. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this friend was right. And so he was in town, not only for that, but partly because Lordstown Motors was taking over the former General Motors plant out in Lordstown, and they were touring that plant for the electric vehicle that they had there. But he was coming to give an accommodation to Youngstown Police Department for, again, community relations during that march. And he wanted to meet, me and a couple of other folks, one of the football coaches from Cheney, Chris and Mill, Guy Burney, who works with SERVE, the Community Initiative to Reduce Violence. And so here I am, in the police garage of Youngstown's finest. And I promise you, and I'll be quick with this part of the story, but I was at home the day before the meeting. And I said to myself, anyone who comes through the community that I love, I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I don't care what their beliefs are. I don't care the politics. This is the second in command of our nation. Absolutely. I am going to let him know the great need that we have in the city that I love. He's not going to come through my community without me letting him know what we can do to try and help this community. So I'm at my kitchen table and I'm writing down what I call the list.
Okay.
And I said, if I get the chance to talk to this man,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell him this, and I'm going to tell him we need this, and I'm going to tell him we need that. And I'm a man of faith. And so as I was sitting there, I promise you, God spoke to me and he said, you want to tell him that, but will you tell him this?
Man, I got goosebumps.
And
I'm
I'm
about to
like-
cry. What?
And I'm like, And so I said, God, if that's what you want me to say. Now, here's what God asked me to say.
Okay.
Now, here's the deal I made with God first, though.
Okay.
I said, this is the Vice President of the United States. I'm over here making this list as if I'm going to get to talk to him.
Okay.
I mean, I'm a nobody.
Right.
So
I mean,
I
yeah.
said to God, I'll put my list away and I'll say what you want me to say to this man, but you're going to have to make it happen. There's no way to get to this man. Secret Service is going to be all around him. He's going to have all kind of White House aides. I said, so I got nothing to worry about, God. I'll be glad to say what you want me to say. Just make it happen. Right?
Like a dare. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
like
yeah,
a dare.
yeah.
We're in this police garage. He gives his speech. And he literally, they had pulled his armored vehicle into the police garage.
Okay.
So when he gets done from his speech, he goes to walk away from the podium
Okay.
to get back in his vehicle.
Right.
Right? And I'm saying to myself, see, God, this man's about to leave. Except one of his aides steps in front of him and redirects him over to all of us, the guests that were there.
Wow.
And so now he's going down the line shaking hands.
Okay.
He shakes the mayor's hand. He shakes Guy Bernie's hand. He shakes Chris Emil's hand, the coach from Cheney at the time. And then he gets to me. And I'm like, God, you really did it, huh? You made it happen.
Right.
I'm going to get the chance. So I stop him and I say, may I have a moment of your time? And it was like a shock to him.
Yeah.
He literally just kind of jumped and he said, yeah, of course. And I said, I don't want to be too long. I said, I know you're a busy man, but I said, last night in preparation for this meeting, I was making a list.
Oh my goodness.
I said, I had a list of things that I wanted to share with you. And I said, but I was interrupted by God while I was making my list with something that God wanted me to say to you. And I said, I'm going to be obedient and say what God wants me to say, and then I'll shut up. I said, God told me to tell you that regardless of what you've done, he still loves you. And he looked at me in just pure shock. And he said, it's not often on this campaign trail when I'm out here talking with as many people that I'm reminded of God's love for me. And I said, that's all I have to say. And then he looked at me and he said, I want that list. Oh. And so it was like, you know, and he hands me his business card. And so for me, it's not, you know, and I know for some people, this story will come off as some, you know, clout chasing, pretentious moment. But really the moral of the story for me is at all costs, I'm going to lay my heart out on the line for the city that I love. And it doesn't matter to me who you are, what position you hold, how much power you have. We need folks here who can help us get Youngstown to where it belongs. Wow. And anytime I have the opportunity to do so in anyone's presence, I'm going to sing our praises and I'm going to make demands and I'm going to ask of you and I'm going to make a list and I'm going to be bold enough to say what God wants me to say.
Wow. And
I'm going to just hope that we can see the beauty in this city that I see. And so that's a long-winded answer to your question, but
I feel like I should just drop the mic and walk. That is wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
wow.
that's no coincidence
Incredible.
to me. I just don't think things happen by coincidence.
No,
you know,
absolutely not.
Again, you know,
Not
I didn't
like that.
ask for any of that stuff.
And of all the messages that you could make up, like, oh, let me give him a word of encouragement.
Yeah.
Let me pat him on the back. That's not something that you say lightly.
No, because here's a person that is a super controversial figure.
Right.
I mean, because of his politics. I mean,
Yeah.
he's second in command to Donald Trump. People
Yeah.
had views on that. And here I am speaking what I believe God asked me to say, which is regardless of what you've done, I still love you. That is not for me to make
Right.
up
No,
or tamper with or
absolutely
touch. That doesn't mean I agree
Right.
with all of anyone's politics,
Right, of
let alone, I
course.
mean, it has nothing to do with that. And
it's
then there will be
crazy.
people who will conflate it to mean
Right.
that here you are, instead of saying this to him, you are
Right.
saying this. And I'm saying at the end of the day, I'm
You
going
got
to
what you
follow what
wanted.
God asked me to do.
And it was asked, it was like, it was requested, I want
Yeah.
that list, instead of, hey, here's something I
Yeah.
hope he reads, that
Yeah.
type of thing. And I mean, he was criticized publicly, I mean, all over, because he had kind of like some strong, high moral standards.
Yeah.
And so, of all the people for that message to come across, that it's, for me, knowing and having seen like him really get criticized for some decisions,
Yeah.
like morally, like never being alone with a woman and
Yeah.
all this stuff. It's wow. Like it's
Yeah.
just, it
And
had to
we'll
been so
all be
meaningful
at
to
some
him.
point criticized for.
Oh,
I'm sure
absolutely.
someone hearing this story will, take
Yeah.
a moment and dissect it and spit it back, and but it doesn't change for me.
Not the Youngstown Click you listening. That.
And for me, it won't. I would go back and I made a social media post prior to taking the meeting, and I explained to people this very fact.
Yeah.
That anyone coming through the city of Youngstown that I love is
Yeah.
going to get, if I have the opportunity to meet and sit and talk with them, they're going to get my respect,
Yeah.
right? But they're also going to get my voice.
Right.
They're going to hear me out.
Yeah.
And what it results in is not for me to touch. One plants and one waters, and God brings the increase of things. And so, same with the Youngstown Flea. I was bold enough to come back and try and plant a seed. And other people were bold enough to invest and take time to partner with us to be vendors. And God
Yeah.
has brought an increase that I can't imagine. That is why I have the pleasure of sitting before you today. And, I don't know if my voice rings as wonderfully as yours does on this podcast, but I hope people hear
Oh,
both
it
of our
does.
hearts, because
Yes.
that is how you and I met.
Yeah,
We met through just
absolutely.
going out here and loving on this community. And as fate would have it, we get to connect, and
I love it.
get to glean
I
off
love
of
it.
your energy and love for this city and love for people, and watch
Yeah.
you do your thing and blossom and bloom too. So
Thank you, Derrick.
Thank you.
And that means a lot, because for those of you who don't know, Derrick was one of the first interviews that I had.
you were shooting your shot. That's what they call it now, right? I mean, you shot for the stars. I mean, I ain't calling myself.
No,
nothing
no,
to shake a
but it
stick
was
at,
like,
but
yeah,
I mean,
it was
you
like
were
a
like, hey,
really
you're one
cool
of the first couple
connection
people
and
I'm reaching out
somebody-
to, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, and a lot of people wouldn't have done that and given me a shot. So
Yeah.
thank you, and yeah, coming on, because at that point you had already started to make, your mark in
Sure.
Youngstown. So okay, last question.
Yeah.
3 of your favorite local places, and it can't be your vendors.
Sure.
Okay, this got like places you love to take your family, places that you just love to go, or little hole in the walls that you're like, oh, you got to check this out. More people should know about this.
That's a tough challenge for me.
I know, because
I-
you were about to say your vendors. I know it.
Yeah, I don't get out a lot, unfortunately. I love Avalon Pizza.
Oh, everybody says that. Oh my
I love
goodness!
Avalon,
And they have a new honey pesto pizza. If you have a chance, try that pizza.
Yeah.
Oh my
I
goodness!
haven't tried it yet.
So good.
I love my neighbors, Penguin City.
Okay.
I love them.
Now they don't have food, but they have food trucks,
food
right?
trucks. Yeah. And I think at one point they were working on a deal to try and get a kitchen in
Cockeye
there,
or
Cockeye
something.
barbecue. But a lot of people don't understand, with a brewery and a liquor license, they have to have some food offering
Yeah.
while you're
yeah.
consuming alcohol.
Well,
so
it's
that's
cool
why they
because
do
you
the
get-
food trucks.
Yeah,
and you get
all
variety
that
in
variety
that
of
as
food trucks.
well. So
Now, do they still have the yogurt or the?
they do.
They
yeah.
they have
yeah.
like, and that's a local kid that puts his yogurt
college
in
kid
there.
from YSU. Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
So I love my neighbors, Penguin. I enjoy going to Dope as well.
Yeah.
And I don't know. The final one, I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna leave your listeners and viewers hanging on the third one. We'll come back. I'll come back with a third one. I'll come back with a third one.
All right, listen. You used to live in Struthers.
Yeah, I used to
Any
live in
good
Struthers.
Struthers spots?
Struthers, I was
or you left
always in
Struthers?
Youngstown. Struthers was where I
okay,
laid my
okay.
head briefly.
Yeah.
I was,
Okay.
my wife looked at me and was like, I don't even know why we live in Struthers.
Right, because you're always in Youngstown.
Always in
yeah,
Youngstown.
Yeah,
Always.
Okay.
But I think, if I had to give you
But
one.
you kind of did Dope and Penguin City, because
Yeah.
even though they're in the same building, they're two separate.
Absolutely. I would say, and this is the God honest truth, it might sound I guess a bit vague, but I love, one of the places I love being is the city of Youngstown.
Oh,
I can travel anywhere. I mean, we've been to Jamaica, we've been to Cuba, we've been nationally, you know
yeah.
what I mean? Vegas and Florida and this.
Yeah.
There's nothing like being home for me.
That's amazing.
And so if I had to pick a place, sorry Avalon, sorry Penguin, sorry all the other choices that I could pick, but
Yeah.
thankfully all those places are in Youngstown.
Yeah.
But like absolutely hands down, there's no place that I long to be.
I feel like
besides
somebody needs
here.
to write a song about that. That just sounded like, I was like home on the range,
Yeah,
where
I love it.
like there needs to be like a song,
Yeah.
a Youngstown song.
Bruce Springsteen
all
made
like
one.
stand
I don't
up
know
and
if he
sing it.
feels like I feel about it. So maybe his song just doesn't do it justice. We might have to go back and see if he'll.
We do, because that was
rewrite
a
a couple of
moment
the
in
lyrics.
history. That was a great song, but it's a moment in
Yeah,
history.
yeah.
We need a song that we could all stand up with pride and
Yeah.
you're like
No, but that's
so
the
funny.
truth. I mean, there's just nothing like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just for me. And I do try in my best to enjoy all the places that I go, but like deep
Right.
down in my spirit and my soul, like I come back home and I'm like, I'm just home.
just home.
There's no place like home.
Youngstown, Ohio.
Yeah,
Love
absolutely.
it. Well, thank you, Derrick.
Yeah,
and
thank you
thank
so
you
much.
so much. This has been so great. I love it. I mean, that's just a little bit about you, but the depths of your research and knowledge about Youngstown and your depths of politics. If they want to connect with you, do it through the website.
Yeah.
And then they could follow Youngstown Flea on social
Absolutely.
media.
My
Awesome.
direct phone number is on the Flea website.
Oh, there you go.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And the more
Okay.
I tell people that, probably the least it gets used.
That-
I think people
Nobody
sometimes
wants
like,
to.
So thank you for always, reaching out to me
Oh,
and
man.
being, bold enough to bring me on and just sit and talk.
For sure.
I think maybe
For
people
sure.
are sick of hearing me talk. Oh man, I don't know.
No, not Youngstown Click listeners. But listen,
Thank
guys.
you for having me though.
Oh yeah, no problem. And I hope that you guys who are listening, your world just got bigger. Your connections became one more, because you truly don't realize how connected you are. And if you realize the part that you have to play in our region and in the world around you, you would never underestimate yourself again. You would never underestimate the worth of your voice, of your smile, of your laugh, ever. But so thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, for those of you watching. And just thank you again to Sagaro, to the Gallagher in downtown Youngstown, to OhioFlame.com, and most especially to Derrick McDowell for the Youngstown Flea.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we'll talk to you next time.